And we are live. I don't even know where to look. Okay, so I've been doing this. There's a real hard temptation to look at yourself. And then you just kind of look like you're looking into nothing. So I'm going to look in the camera like this as much as I possibly can. Oh, this is really weird and uncomfortable, but we're gonna try this out here. I'm Christopher Balzano, Tripping on Legends. Natalie is not here tonight. I am in my house. Hello, Rita, what's going on? And basically, I wanted to come on because we found out some interesting stuff while we were doing some research. But I also kind of wanted to explain that we haven't had a show in a few weeks. And if you've noticed, the shows have been getting later and later, spaces between them. What's up, Howard? Thank you very much. This is like a painting job that, ask me tomorrow about my history in painting. So we haven't had a chance to really put out many shows lately, and the distance has been getting longer between them because just we have crazy hectic lives. This is in some ways our third job, and so we are trying to get as much done as we can, but we can't publish every single week. So we're really aiming from now 2 times a week. Yes, I almost always wear hats, but I'm wearing a special hat tonight because this is relevant for the Tomoka outpost, the hometown of Tomoki, our hero in a lot of ways for what I'm talking about tonight. Anyway, we are trying to get episodes out every 2 weeks. Now, because we hey, Paul, what's going on? I hope the release of the movie is going well. I saw you packing things up and that you're hitting the waves. Too bad Pair Relations isn't around anymore, or else we would pick you up as a client again. Anyway, every 2 weeks. See, this is the kind of stuff that happens. I start falling down rabbit holes, and then we can't get stuff done. And as most of you guys know, especially if you've listened to our Tripping on Kids episodes, there's 5 little ones that tag along with us. So coordinating all that and getting some stuff out. And also, it's really hard to find ones that are in Lee County or surrounding counties because, you're kind of chasing the same stories over and over again. So we've got some really great stuff, especially if you've been listening to the episodes, a lot of weird things happening around the Ocala State Forest. And it's kind of like this area is Bridgewater Triangle area. And so we are going to be focusing on that, but that takes a weekend where we both have off, we both can get there. And we are coming with those. So what you might see in the coming weeks are some more kind of themed episodes, maybe some more breakdowns of different legends, things like that. Definitely based on some things that have been happening. I want to do a lighthouse episode because we went to one lighthouse in Key West, and we're hoping to crack some of the ones in Boca Grande. Hopefully, hope. But so I just want to get that stuff out of the way of where we're trying the best we can. If people can tell me whether I'm looking at the camera, because I really can't tell, and Bremer's not here, and I'm using his laptop for it. So I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do this episode tonight. But 2 things happened that made it kind of want me to do this. The first is thank you, Paul. I have an infected thumb, and I'd like to say it was something cool, but I got a hangnail. And then my thumb became 3 times its size. So I have to actually spend time soaking it in hot water. So I am literally, with this hand, do I even want to bring it in? I'm literally, there you go. I'm going to put in a help ticket for it. And I know I'm the one who will get actually results from it. So I figured, while I'm here soaking, I might as well kind of do some stuff that I've been meaning to get to. And the second thing is one of the legends I'm going to talk about tonight involves the Chattahoochee tribe, which I believe is in Georgia. Not Tennessee like you would think from the name, although it might have reached up into Tennessee. But they are they're touched upon in one of these legends that I'm talking about. And I'm reading with my son tonight, and we're reading this book about these kids that are treasure hunters whose parents have died, and then they find out, yes, it's got Epsom salt in it. They find that their father and mother are CIA agents, but they've spent their whole life being treasure hunters on a boat. All this crazy stuff is going on. But to distract these pirates that have boarded the boat, one of the kids, the person who's narrating the story, starts talking about the USS. I see I have to keep looking down at my notes. All this stuff is getting so crazy, I actually have note cards for all the stuff. Just so I can keep it, motifs and all that good stuff going on. The Chattahoochee. It's the USS Chattahoochee. Who's ever heard of that? I have never heard of the word Chattahoochee in my life, right? Maybe that's because I'm a northern boy. I don't know. But I'm reading with my son tonight. It's like the plot of Spy Kids, but imagine it's on a boat and they're like world famous treasure hunters. And I was like, that's a sign. Right? Because one of the last times we got a sign like this, and now I see that Natalie's here. So Natalie, you can totally correct me on this. But we were having all these weird things happen to us, like on an individual basis. Chattahoochee, Chattattahoochee, Chattahoochee. We were having all this weird stuff happened, and like I said, Natalie, correct me. She almost killed a bird. Like she thinks she killed a bird, and then the bird flew off and like turned the corner. And she started to do research on like what near dead birds mean. And what she found was, when she typed these words in, was a reference to a book by, I totally don't have it now. What's her name? By Gilbert Morris, a book by Gilbert Morris about, and this is a whole series of books that all revolve around Natalie's talking about an Alan Jackson song. I could see Howarth, like with his Southern connections, but Natalie knows a song that wasn't made. Anyway, moving on, or is it her new song? I'll wait for a response to that. But anyway, she wrote these books called The Singing River. Right. And it's and it's really crazy because we were currently in the investigations of the Singing River. So we were doing this research, we were presenting it, and she happened to come across this novel which focused on a similar haunting to the one, or similar legend, urban legend, ghost story that has to do with, here it's the Manatee River, but this is the Mississippi River, or it's in Mississippi. And it was really insane. Because everything just kind of like fell into place. And so when that stuff happened tonight and I was planning on talking about the Singing River, I was like, that's my sign. Like, I got to go on. I got to talk about it a little bit. But before I get to that, I just want to hit upon Tomoki. This is Tomoka, but this is where Tomoki is. The story of Tomoki. If you guys have listened to the last 2 episodes, we had some really interesting things happen to us when we went to, or found interesting things when we went to Ormond Beach. And one of them is this completely fictitious old Timucua Indian chief named Tomoki, who basically the people of Ormond Beach made him up because they wanted to like dedicate this park and they wanted a hero behind it. You can listen to the episode about that. But in talking about that, I start talking about why these things are happening, like, right? Why those people seem to want to create legends. And a lot of it had to do with there is ghostly activity in those forests. And the one I'm really going to focus on, all right, I'm going to have to go back and read your note, Howard, because I'm in a flow now. They really, one of the things that they said was that Tomoki had decided to run off with Olita, who he loved, and had stolen fire. Right, he had stolen the fire from the sacred campfire, in addition to having stolen the water earlier. If you listen to the episode, you know what I'm talking about. And that the ghost lights that are seen in the forest and are seen on the road and seen all around there are actually him and her searching for each other. So they're running through the forest in candlelights, which connected to these one in Silver Springs. And that's where Okalawaha, was the son of one chief, and he fell in love with Winona, right? And they fell in love, and they would walk the forest, and they planned to run away to the Chattahoochee, which were the tribe to the north. They ended up getting caught. The people were rifle firing. They were going through the woods. They had the the things with the fire on it, like, and they decided to commit suicide, and they jumped into Silver Springs, and that's off a high bluff, and that's kind of why the river is named for him. That's why these ghost lights are seen in that forest. And so what we started to hit upon were all of these legends that had to do with Native Americans and love, right? And it's not beautiful love. It's not like I love you forever, although the Singing River one in Manatee kind of is in some ways, but it's love gone wrong, right? It's something to do with Native Americans, and the couple loves each other. The couple are kept apart. I mean, it's typical Romeo and Juliet, so it's an Eastern story as well. And then what happens is there's a suicide, or there's a death, or there's a death and a suicide, or there's a suicide and a death, or they're killed by the people, or they're set afire. And that's what these ghost lights in these forests are, right? And to some degree, there's a little bit of kind of white man's burden there. What's going on, Scott? Because we have this idea of maybe we've put onto them these stories to explain these unexplained phenomena that are in an area, right? And because we've got this guilt, we've created this situation where we have to create these star-crossed lovers who kill each other or die because of each other. And it's this really interesting thing of, are these stories being told within those tribes, or are they just kind of the stories that we're putting on the stuff? And there's we're putting on the actual paranormal activity, right? So there's something that happens, it's unexplained, because we have this mysticism, because we have this desire to kind of wrong some rights, or there's some misunderstanding of Native American mysticism, we create these stories, right? Because I can't find references to most of the characters who are very specifically named in these. So like Tomoki, right? We can track Tomoki down. That was great. We're able to find that, like, no, he's totally fake. They made him up. He's like the equivalent, I said, of like Wally from the Red Sox, right? A mascot made up for an area. But a lot of these other names, I can't get a handle on, right? And so one of the things that's been racking my brain is, are there other Native American legends? And this is where I want people to share as much as they possibly can. Probably not in this post, but if you want to, maybe I'll create something. You can do it in Paranormal Podcast, the group that I created, or on Tripping on Legends, or even just on my Facebook. Are there Native American stories you know from where you are? Now, most of you are either in Florida or Massachusetts, but I'm hoping to get other people as well, that involve Native Americans, love, and death. Because I want to track as many of these as I can in terms of the names of the characters and the situations that happen. We've got about 4 that take place from one coast to the next coast. So like from the East Coast, like Ormond Beach, all the way to the other coast in Bradenton. We got Silver Springs. We've got stuff that happens in other places in Ocala Forest. And so many of these stories are same, that I want to know, are these based on European stories or European ideas that are put on to unexplained things that are happening in the New World? Or are these actual like stories that they have been telling for years, right? Because if you look at most Native American stories, they usually involve some kind of force of nature, and then and then maybe a character or two who's a real life Native American. These are stories of Native American and Native American, and then wacky stuff happens, which makes me think there's like a misunderstanding, right? Like a European telling a Native American story would just kind of throw them in as a character, as opposed to actually having the actual ideals of that tribe. So I want you to submit as many stories as you possibly can to me from your area, right? That involve love, death, and Native Americans. That's kind of my theme for April. April being the cruelest month, I figure why not talk about love, because love is cruel. So in doing the research for that, I came across an article called "Can We Recognize God in the Singing River?" And obviously that stuff, bam, like it just popped out at me because it had God. It seemed like it was some kind of explanation. And it's really kind of a Christianization of, it's kind of, it's a very academic article. It appeared in Religion and Theology in 2007. So in terms of easy reading, it's not easy reading. It's basically an exploration of these singing river legends that appear. And then they specifically seem to talk about Gilbert Morris's, or I'm sorry, did I say Gilbert? Yeah, Gilbert Morris. They seem to specifically talk about Gilbert Morris's ones. But they talk about the legend where it comes from. So this is the Singing River. Now, if you haven't listened to our Singing River episodes, go back, because they are two of the best ones we've done, the Singing River and then the Singing River Sings Back. And they're actually some of our most popular ones too. But the basic legend is that in this Manatee River, on the Manatee River, two people found love. They have a happy ending because they were eventually able to join the two tribes together and kind of live in happiness and all that kind of good stuff. So it's Romeo and Juliet, but with a happy ending. So if you can imagine that, not nearly as interesting. There's also a pirate ship legend that's attached to it as well, about a pirate. He waits dramatically, hoping that Natalie will pop it in. Miguel, Miguel, one or the other. And he kidnaps the daughter of the commandant and traps her in the room, traps him on his boat. And to make up for the fact that he's basically abducted her and kidnapping her and doing whatever else he's going to be doing, he strings like harp strings across the windows. So whenever the wind blows, it makes this beautiful noise. And then she, as most people don't like to be abducted, she escapes the room, sets the entire boat on fire, and you can actually hear the music being played continuously. Like, if you're on the river, you can hear the music being played, and that's the wind blowing as the ship's going down. And so Natalie and I actually maybe witnessed that pirate ship coming out of the water. You can go on YouTube and watch our video on the Singing River, and that's kind of like a little bit freaky. But the idea of the story takes place, like, they seem to, it happens post the singing, right? In other words, nothing's ever said to why it explains. Like in the story, the Calusa Native American, who's the girl, that's me looking at my infected thumb, she says, these are the songs of my people, right? And if you hear them, that means that they've accepted you, and on nights you can, but they never explain exactly what it is. But I was able to find the actual legend that it comes down to. Now, I could have totally, I'd said Miguel Pascal. Oh, you're killing me, Natalie. The butcher, yes, the butcher. I always forget to say the butcher, which makes him sound so much cooler. If only I knew how to say butcher in Spanish. If we have any bilingual people out there, butcher in Spanish, that was his nickname. I found a reference to the actual story. And this story doesn't seem to make sense to me. I'm going to read from, this is from, I'm trying to find out, Mark Wallace. Okay, so Mark Wallace is the person who wrote this down. This is in the article. According to ancient legend, the two communities had peacefully coexisted along the banks of the Singing River generation after generation. The Biloxi, okay, so like Mississippi Biloxi, the Biloxi Indians, however, were a warrior clan, while the Pascagoula people were more peace-loving. So Biloxi, violent, Pascagoula, peace-loving. A mutual identité? I guess that's a fancy French word for peace. Had held between both groups since early memory. This non-aggression pact entailed the provision that the Biloxi would never attack the Pascagoula as long as no intermarriage between the two took place. But the pact became threatened. So here we go. Love screwing everything up again. Threatened by the fledgling relationship between a young man from the Pascagoula family and a young woman from the Biloxi clan. Star-crossed lovers, the boy and girls, growing affection towards each other, threatened to disturb the peace and stability that existed between the two communities. Fearful, okay, now here's where it gets, so that's when we've explored that theme, right? Here's where it gets weird. Fearful, not that falling in love is not weird. Fearful of an attack from the Biloxi on their population and not willing to take up arms against their neighbors, the Pascagoula opted for a united course of action to prevent a massacre. they got together and decided that this would be the best way to solve this problem. They decided to put themselves to death. And they did so, according to the legend, walking single file into the dark waters of the Singing River, while singing a mournful tribal song in the process. So in other words, these two tribes who got along only because of like a pact were torn apart when, once again, neighboring tribes, love, they're not supposed to be together, they're being together, these two can't help it. But then the one tribe decides to commit a mass suicide rather than go to war, right? I cannot find why they would have taken that course of action, right? So they all go single file into the river, singing their tribal songs, and that is why there is singing on the river, right? So when the Calusa Maiden talks about the songs of her people, that story is either borrowed or similar, at least, to this other story, and it's never explained what the singing naturally is. So is it supposed to be that her Calusa natives did the same kind of thing? Now, the Calusa, if you know them at all, are not peace-loving people. They're not the kind of people who, it seems, are going to commit mass suicide rather than fight a war. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't care how peace-loving you are. There's nothing that I've ever been able to find where people would just kill themselves rather than defend themselves. Although I guess if you're talking maybe some Buddhist monk kind of people, we're talking a whole tribe of people, like a mass self-inflicted genocide because of this. It just doesn't seem to make sense, right? So where would that story come from? I understand the star-crossed lover ones, but we found this, and there's other singing rivers all throughout the country, right? So I'm trying to track as many of them as I possibly can. But this is just a very weird idea to me. Like, it explains something. It explains why the singing is. Now, here's the deal. This is a convergence of two different natural things that are happening, although one might be supernatural, right? The first is a tribe gets wiped out, and we find the same thing with the Timucua on the East Coast, right? Over the course of 200 years between when the French get here and when the Spanish are doing their thing, the Timucua basically vanished entirely. And so these stories of like the pink carnivorous fog, all that, and Tomoki and Olita waging war and destroying each other's tribe, like that comes from a desire to explain like where the hell did the Timucua go, right? In the same way, it seemed like the Pascua, they also vanished somehow, right? And so people have to explain that. And at the same time, this is the second part of the convergence, you have this weird noise that's coming from the river. Now, and I'm going to get this wrong, so Natalie, if you're still with us, you totally have to help me. There was something about phosphorus stones or something like that that they were saying in the Manatee River that was making noise and releasing sound, and that's where this supposed singing comes from, right? And so it's a natural phenomenon that people have put a paranormal thing on. And maybe the same thing is happening up there in Mississippi with these, with why they're these people. The tribe vanishes. We have this area of the river that's giving off these weird natural sounds that we don't necessarily know how to explain. Now, here's my issue with that, other than the fact that I don't understand science at all. And I don't understand how rocks can sing. Maybe someone can help me with that. The weird thing is they say that as it got more populated, the singing stopped. So people don't hear the singing anymore, right? And yet the stones are still there. So have we just affected the water so much that the stones don't react the same way they do, and that's why we're not getting the noises? That's why we're not getting the singing? Or is it the fact that it actually is something paranormal? There is something weird trapped in those areas, and the more people come in, the more it's disturbed, the more people don't stop to listen, and therefore the music doesn't play anymore. I don't know. Like I said, that's okay. We didn't talk about we just talked bad about you for the last 4 minutes, Howard. So anyway, I wanted to put that stuff out there for you. The signs seem to kind of all be pointing that I should do it tonight. It's been 20 minutes, so tannic acid runoff, which sounds like something after a really spicy meal, but tannic acid runoff. If you're a scientist out there and you know what tannic acid runoff is, please make sure to let me know. And actually, I believe a scientist just signed in or at least a science teacher just signed in. So if she can explain tannic acid runoff, I would 100% like that, and I'll wait. No, I really can't wait. It's waiting for science is boring. So that's kind of like my little pit stop. I'm gonna do probably a little bit more organized one of these, maybe on the off week. So like publish an episode, do kind of like this, so we can at least have this stuff out there. Dave, of course, always the researcher, just sent the link. So if there's a link in the comments here, I'm going to be clicking on it myself once I sign off. I encourage you to do the same. So that's kind of all I have for tonight. My name's Christopher Balzano, speaking for both Natalie, Chris, and Tomoki. Thank you guys for coming in and listening to this. And once again, I'm going to put out that last call. There we go. I'm going to put out that last call. Give me as many love Native Americans, and you know what? Not even Native Americans. Love and death and ghosts. Love, death, ghosts. 3 great things. Love, death, ghosts. If you want to throw Native Americans in, should we order tripping hats? I'll have to ask Natalie. Natalie is the business mind of this situation. So if she thinks that, no, Steve, it's not just all us whites, right? We like to think of, I'm going to stay for a little bit. We like to think of the fact that we did all of this. And now that my hand is free, my infected hand, I'm going to be able to drink. We like to think it was us, and it was us to some degree. But it's also silly, and this is the same thing that can be said for Massachusetts. It's not like every tribe of Native Americans was holding hands and singing Kumbaya, or whatever Native American version of Kumbaya there is, and loving each other, right? For example, when the Wampanoags started to go down, all of their tribes that are around them that had previously been kind of, yeah, we like you because you're the most powerful, you're the big dog, so turned on them. Right? And I think the same thing happened here. So I wish I had that index card. I don't have that index card on me. But it basically said, yes, sports teams can be haunted. Remind me, Mr. Colvin, and I can give you a book that's all about, what's up, sister? It's all about baseball and other sports and like hauntings that go on around them. So I actually have that book in my room, Colvin, if you want to borrow it sometime. Dan Gordon is a great writer and a good friend. Okay, so we're getting into a little bit of a turf war between the sports teams. But anyway, these Native American tribes were inflicting travesties against each other as well. So it wasn't just what we were doing, and we were a large part of it, right? Like everything I found out about the Timucua says, part of it had to do with they didn't have the tolerance for the diseases that the French and the Spanish brought, right? But it also said they were being attacked from tribes from the north. And of course, we all know the influence. Here we go, Mr. Colvin, this is for you. We all know the influence of the Seminoles on this area as well. So it wasn't just, it was definitely like they were overmatched. And there was not necessarily the best relationship between the explorers and the settlers and the tribes that were there, but oftentimes those tribes took that opportunity for the weakened tribes to enact old vengeances and things like that. So would love to hear your Native American love, ghost, death stories, but also you can feel free to throw out some modern day ones, right? Like we've got a lot of areas that have to do with suicide lever leaps and things like that. I'm trying to compare them. I'm trying to basically see, like, are these American stories, which came first, like we tagged in the last episode, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did we create the situation at the Assonet Ledge, for example, right? The lady in white at the Assonet Ledge who commits suicide because her lover never shows up. Is that based on a Native American story, or is the Native American story influenced by Europeans? Then I'm trying to track as many of these as I can because that's what I geek out on. And also I'm trying to explain it because, once again, all these places are places where real things are happening, right? So it's not as if there are not ghost lights in these areas. It's not as if on Horn Pond there's not a ghostly um, sailor or rower who you can see by the full moon, right? Those things are existing. People are experiencing that. It's the stories that we're putting on them that I'm trying to track. So any stories you have, any stories you know, get them to me when you can. And like maybe there's a book in there that's just like, how love, haunts us all or something like that. I don't know. I'm Christopher Balzano for Tripping on Legends. I'm not going to do the whole spiel about following us, but if you've got anything, you can either post it on my Facebook. I'll create a post where people can actually put it, or you can email me at spookybalzano@gmail.com. So for Christopher Balzano, for Natalie Christ, for Tomoki, for Navarro, for DeSoto, these are all people who led to death because of love. For Okalawa, here's hoping all your trips are legendary. Have a good night.